Hello, my name is Dr. Norma Thomas, and I am one of the co-founders of Story Joy Inc., along with my daughter, Raina Leone. This is another in our series of videos around the history of Uniontown, Pennsylvania, in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. And I am introducing a segment that will go along with a video I took of the first showing of the traveling Fayette County African American History Museum. Back in 2012, the East End United Community Center was able to secure a grant from the Laurel Tourism Bureau, and that enabled me to do some of my initial research on Baker Alley and the Underground Railroad. More recently, East End received another Laurel Tourism grant, and with that, we have been able to start the African American Fayette County Traveling Museum. The hope with this museum is that it will be housed permanently. The plan is to house it at John Wesley AME Zion Church, one of the locations of the Underground Railroad, and again, where the physical tunnels lead from Route 40 into Baker Alley. So we hope to be able to show at least the entrances to those tunnels. So again, this is my introduction to the video that shows the panels that we put up back in August of 2019 for the first showing of the Traveling Museum. You can't see a lot of the information in detail, but it does give you an idea of what the museum covers. It has since been greatly expanded, so it's a much larger traveling museum. If you're interested in having the Traveling Museum come to your location, our contact information is at the end of this video. And again, we will be housing showings at John Wesley AME Zion Church in the near future. So enjoy the upcoming video. Thank you so much. This is a video of the African American Traveling Museum of Fayette County here at East End United Community Center, August 22nd, 2019. The first panel starts out depicting Fayette County's history of slavery, and it looks at the slave schedules from 1790 to 1800 to 1810, and it lists free and slaves in households. The next panel is on the Underground Railroad, and it looks at the conductors that were on the African American conductors on the railroad, the plaque commemorating the slaves escaping into Baker Alley, another monument in Baker Alley, and then some articles about the history of the African American experience in southwestern Pennsylvania. So that's the second panel. It's a three-pronged panel. The third is on the African American cemeteries. We have Clearview, Green Lane in Brownsville, the Thomas Cemetery, and Uniondale Cemetery in Georges Township. So we have the history of Clearview, a picture of Mr. Finney and Eddie Leone and Mr. Johnson and Philip Thomas in one of our cleanup projects. This is an article on Edward Thomas, my dad, who was a caretaker of Clearview Cemetery for years. The caretaker now is Mr. Don Homer, who's done an excellent job in bringing back this historical cemetery. Here's a panel on the Thomas Cemetery and those who were in that cemetery. So this is the third panel. The fourth panel is on the African American churches just here in Uniontown. So we have pictures of Berean, City Chapel, Interfaith, John Wesley, Mount Olivet, Mount Rose, New Beginning, Shiloh, and St. Paul. And Uniontown used to have an African American newspaper called the Courier Digest. So this is a few of the pages from that newspaper. This is the charter, the Uniontown charter, the American Woodmen. The American Woodmen is an insurance company and a fraternal organization started originally by Caucasians and then moving to be an African American organization. And they do still exist. This is the original charter from the 1920s. These panels depict major sports figures in Uniontown. There are too many to name, but if you go to the Fayette County Hall of Fame, you will see many of those famous basketball and football players that came from Uniontown. Ernie Davis had a movie named after him. So these are some of those famous players from the Uniontown area. This is an article about the Playground of Champions. Many of the famous basketball players came from the East End Playground. These two panels depict some of the people who were the first. So like Mrs. Dorothy Boone, who was the first African-American teacher in Laurel Highlands, Mr. Carl Lance and his wife in the Lance Funeral Home, which took care of the needs of African-American families, took care of their deceased and still exists today. We had an ambassador, we had a judge, we had a movie person that was in the movies. Mr. Harold Better is a famous jazz icon, he's still living. We had a number of firsts, Doris Rubottom Hackley, a famous singer from the big band era. This panel is one of the pictures done by a great artist, Mrs. April Sims, and the person in the portrait is Mrs. Alberta Thomas, my grandmother. But April and her brother Danny were great artists. This table depicts a lot of the history of the East End United Community Center where this is being held. This is on Dr. Vaughn, who was famous in history. He was a black dentist, but also a community activist. And this is on Corporal Henry L. Dantzler, a technician, 5th grade with the Red Ball Express. So this is our African American Traveling Museum. It's only up for today, unfortunately, but we have plans to depict future panels, future showings of the museum. For those who came through today, thank you very much, and we hope that you will participate further by giving us history so that we can expand this museum even further. Thank you. This is Dr. Norma Thomas, the curator of this event.